Everybody smile. Everybody smile. Everybody smile. Yeah, let me just pause all these things that I have on, and we are live, folks. There we go. Hello, planet Earth. Welcome to Lilia's live stream, and especially to this monthly series with DM Maynard, which is titled Reflective Conversations on Gender Transition, an educational interview series. So everybody, thank you so much for coming. Again, we have quite a following now here and with this series. And today we have a couple of guests with us as well as DM Maynard. So we have people from 2 continents, Hong Kong and New York. DM Maynard, who's an author, who's in New York City, and Christine, who's the parent of a trans person who transitioned as an adult in Hong Kong. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you so much.
And later on, we'll be calling in Kyle, okay, who is also on the East Coast of the US, and we'll talk about their gender transition in the frame of the relationship with his parents and other family members. So, listeners, please make sure to write in your questions into the chat here on the side or here. Which side is it on? And let us know what you would like us to talk about, and we'll try to integrate it into our conversation today. So, in former editions, we've spoken with partners, spouses, parents of minors, non-binary educators, and more. And today's theme, as I mentioned, is focusing on opening spaces to discuss the journey of a parent and the family of an adult in gender transition. So coinciding with International Family Day, which was on the 15th of this month, and Ida Hobbit, which was on Monday, our title today is Experiencing My Adult Child's Transition. It's a topic many parents today are hungry to learn more about, and which DM is an expert in. So Dee, you and I, as we always mention, we met in 2019 at the Philly Trans Wellness Conference, which eventually led to our first live last December to talk about your book for parents specifically. And then we did a live, and then we decided to do this series together, which is beautiful. So can you tell us a little bit, why did you even want to start this series and write the parent book?
Okay, hi everybody. I'm very excited to be here. Well, I began, I think we met like through the partner book, and then the parent book is, then we, worked on that a lot, spoke about that. Oh, thank you, Lil. I have them here, so I'll show you them in real time over here in the live. The reason why, the parent book in particular is because I want every child to be supported and loved. The whole goal, I get really serious with this, most of the time, is I don't want to lose a child, lose a life. And I really feel that with parent support, it makes a huge, humongous difference. And I don't think any child should ever be subjected to a situation or circumstance where their safety is at risk and their life is at risk. And in whatever way that can happen. And so I wanted to create a workbook. In particular, I did the parent workbook, which is my second book, the reflective workbook for parents and families of transgender and non-binary children. Your transition is your child transitions. And the thing that I want to say is that a lot of people think that because it says children, it means a person who's a minor. But the truth is once a child, always a parent's child. And so that's really was the intention for all parents who have a child, regardless of their age. And so I felt that in this particular case, writing this book, parents often asked me if I would write a book for them after I did the partner book that would be very similar for them to reflect and look upon their life and their journey as they navigate the transition for themselves. And in this way, I really hope that a parent can support a child's journey. And if they can't, that child and or the parent or parents with them can help them find someone in their life that can be their support so that they stay alive. So that's like my real purpose of that book. The partner book I did was the first one, the Reflective Workbook for Partners of Transgender People, Your Transition as Your Partner Transitions, is to help a partner navigate the transition for themselves as their partner is transitioning or questioning their gender. And then the last book that I did, which I love so much too, is the Reflective Workbook for Teachers and Support Staff of Trans and Non-Binary Students, Your School's Transition as your students transition. And this is for all educators, administrators, anyone to help an educator support their students in school and to learn more and reflect on their thoughts and feelings, sometimes biases and unknowns, and to get the proper information at the same time processing the transition as an educator working with a student. So that's why I did, these books, but really the parent one was really to help parents go through this journey. And Christine I'm so grateful for her for being here. She's a very candid, honest person, and I love her directness, so you'll all get to see that about her. So you're muted. Okay.
Thank you, Dee. Sorry, I had my mic off there for a minute. So thank you, Dee, for explaining your 3 books, and we had a great time at the live we did with a non-binary educator who specialized in music therapy, and who we talked a lot about this last book you have for educators. So that was a lot of fun. If anybody wants to check that out, we did a little singing.
Dancing.
Yes. So Dee, I'll let you take over this part of the interview with Christine first, and then when it's time, we'll bring Kyle back in.
Okay, so one thing I just want to make viewers aware of is we might have a delay sometimes from the different continents, and so if we talk over each other, it's not intentional. We're all trying to get used to this platform with delays. Okay, so I want to say before I start my interviews, Christine, hello and welcome.
Hi, Dee, thank you very much.
And if there's anything that I say that's either triggering or uncomfortable for you to answer, please let me know. I'm sure you will immediately, because I always want to respect and honor any guest and anybody who's been courageous enough to come on to this very public platform. So I met Christine through her son, who I met through a friend. And so this is really the 3rd time Christine and I have ever spoken. So we go, and often I've known the person I've interviewed for quite a long time, but we got to know each other rather quickly and had a private conversation before this taping, and then one with all of us together. So we might bring up some of those conversations that we had. So Christine, how did you, how did you find out that Kyle needed to transition?
I remember it very clearly. It was in August, just before he was off to university in another country. And we were on a ferry, and he handed me a letter saying he'd wanted to talk to me about something, but decided to write a letter instead. And so I read this letter, which said he thought he was transgender. And I forget what the rest of the letter said, but it was about that. So that's how I found out. There was no tee up, or it was totally new to me.
Okay, so he was going off to college. So was he 17 or 18 when you found out? I'm trying to get the logistics of that.
I think he was just 17. I think he went off to college earlier than, because in Hong Kong they start a year younger. So.
Oh. Okay, so the reason why we're saying adult child is because now he is an adult. And I know that there's what makes this unique in this situation is that you were once in charge of all of his legal things, all of his decisions. You were part of that process, and then that shifted and changed. So we'll get into some of that. And because I think that's an important dynamic here. I understand that your child didn't transition at say 30, and we're saying adult child, but because he is an adult now, I think that the nuance of those changes are really important to cover here in this platform. So do you remember what your thoughts or feelings were when you first learned or read the letter?
Well, it was complete shock to me because I had never even contemplated that. It just came out of the blue. So yes, I was shocked. Didn't know what to do. You know, usually when a child presents you with a problem or an issue, you can usually help them somehow. But this was totally greenfield for me.
Okay. And so how did you educate yourself about transitioning, the transition process? How did that look for you?
Well, I started reading. I reached out to my sister. I only have one sibling, and I told her. And she actually was great. I was in Hong Kong. She was in New Jersey, and she actually found the psychiatrist that I approached because he has a gay and transgender basically practice. And so I went to see him. And then I started doing more research from there. But that was like my first point of reference. Okay.
And so did your thoughts shift then over time? How are you doing at this moment? How is it all for you? The shock is one off?
Oh, there's no, it's been a long time. So yes, I've gotten accustomed to it. I think, my other sons and I kind of along this journey with Kyle. So yes, it was a very slow for me. I think everybody else was like, okay. But as a mother, I was just really, as the British say, gobsmacked. So I was really taken aback.
So what aspect of the transition was like particularly easy or hard for you to accept?
I think it was because as I did research and I talked to our family physician who knew Kyle, everybody advised me that if I could persuade him to wait a few more years, he may have a different perspective on it. Now, on the other hand, the psychiatrist said, no, he said, I think he said, if he was 13, I'd say maybe, but at 17, he said, they pretty much know that's what's true for them. So, that's how we did it. I mean, actually, well, he went off to college and he was very lucky. He was in London and the NHS was totally supportive of this in terms of hormonal therapies. And that was the first aspect of it. Interestingly enough, they don't provide any psychological support.
Okay. And so
did you lose SD?
yes, I did. I'm trying to get you back. My internet went out.
That's all right.
Okay, so what you take over for a second while I get myself
Sure.
back, if you don't mind.
Sure, not a problem. So Christine, in Hong Kong, do you find that there is awareness of the trans community?
Hong Kong is very conservative. So there's not great recognition of gay and lesbian relationships. We have the only marriages are between two heterosexuals. There are, of course, trans people here. But so we have the country has an identity card that everybody carries. So think of it as a social security card. And so Kyle was concerned, and this is how you insert it into something to enter into the country. So Kyle was concerned about changing his gender, but you have to have gender reassignment surgery in order for them to allow you to change your identification card, unlike New York State.
Right. Yeah, it's still
Yeah.
jumping through hoops then, no?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, people would rather we don't want to deal with that. We just want to deal with, heterosexual what they call normal.
And you mentioned that in your workplace, you have a lot to do with diversity and inclusion.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of that in the framework of corporate and philosophy?
I just
Sure,
want
I
to
mean-
make sure, I'm sorry, can you see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just
Hi,
want to make sure you're back. Hi, I thought you could, but I'm thinking maybe, okay. And
Sherry,
after,
I just wanted to get in that question and
great,
I'll
well,
let
I
you.
love that you asked the question. It's fantastic. I'm just making sure that I'm not like frozen here and I don't realize. Thanks so much. Live Zoom. Go ahead.
No, I actually, Lily, I'm an executive search consultant. I have my own business and I work with senior level, I work with corporations to find them senior level talent. And I think diversity is not just important because it's the right thing to do, but it enriches an organization. But there is still, I think to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of talk and not much action. Companies send out slick videos and look at us, but actually when push comes to shove, there's not a lot of action. Sad to say.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's still work to be done. And yeah,
Lots.
talking the talk and walking the walk, as they say, right?
Two different things.
Exactly. So Dee, you were at the part where you were talking about other people in the family, right? And acceptance and
Right. Yes. But I just want to comment on what you just all talked about because I think it's important.
Sure.
I think that, this is why we're doing this series, is because we really want to educate people about this. And that, I know that Christine brought up, sexuality as opposed to gender a moment ago about, homosexuality and this and that. And that, people because we really want people to understand that gender is very different than sexuality. I mean, they're interconnected, but that the two separate things, and that people feel because they are in different platforms, maybe for work related things, that they feel that if they provide or understand services or provide different services for people who are come out as in one way, that they've covered all ways. And really it's a different dynamic there. And when you would, I know Christine, you and I spoke a minute, because I'll just jump there for a second, about wanting to support people in employment that are transgender. And that one of the things we talked about, when a person presents as binary, people are may not often even know of a person transitioned. If a person presents maybe non-binary or may not be seen as binary, if that's the way they identify, that's where I think that a lot of work needs to be done, that people need to understand that gender is fluid, presentation, expression is fluid, and that is a person in who, that's their presentation, and that's who they are, and that's who their identity is, and that they, what a person brings to the table should be honored, and nothing. We should stop thinking that if a person is along the binary, they're the only people that should be employed. So I just want to give a shout out for that. I'm not quite sure if I'm explaining exactly the way I mean, but I hope it's coming across that way.
I think it does.
Okay. Because I know we had this conversation. So, okay. So tell us about family, because I know you said your sister was a big support to you, and and you mentioned a moment ago Kyle's siblings, and so were there any other people in his life that you needed to share, or both of you chose to share the transition with?
Well,
Really,
we have some very close friends who I always call the surrogate grandparents, and then some friends of them. Just everybody was, I told them, I don't know if Kyle had told them first, I'm not sure, but everybody was amazingly supportive of this. I mean, there was, as it should be, but I'm just saying, I think that every young people at that age, Kyle's told me some of the stories of people that he's met in his transition, whose families were not so supportive. In fact, in some cases, just threw them out. And I also think it's about place. So Kyle was in London. Home is Hong Kong, but it's home is New York. So I have to say that, I'm glad we don't live in like in Indiana or someplace like that. So, Kyle had no problem in changing his birth certificate or his driver's license in New York State. So I think in that sense, it was much easier than it would be in other places. My other two sons were just fabulous. Surprised, sad about losing the person that they knew Kyle as. But, everybody just really just went in to support him.
Do you think they lost the person that they knew as, or do you think they just had to reframe the way they accepted or affirmed him? Because, I mean, let's talk a minute about that with, it sounds like it's like connected to kind of a grief type of thing.
Yes.
The loss, because it's when we say the person has changed, aspects of who they once were has changed, but the person is the person. I mean, this is again my bias, my thoughts. I don't want to put that on anybody else. So can you speak a moment about that's my belief, let's talk a minute about grief, and if I'm speaking for someone else, tell me what your thoughts are.
No, it is a grieving process. I mean, I went through 2 years of I'll be frank, about a depression, because I was helpless in being able to do anything. I felt, and I think that for any sibling, whether their sibling, the person who transitioned, whether that person who was transitioning was either a brother or a sister, they had always interacted with that person in that sense. So now they have to, meet a brother that they never had. It's very different than, let's say, interacting with the little sister you thought you would always have. So I don't know, I've not spoken to them about grieving. Certainly it was for me.
Okay. And so I know that Lil has a question.
Yes, I just wanted to ask on behalf of some viewers here. We've got some people here asking questions. You mentioned that Kyle was in the UK. Sophie's asking, thank you, Sophie, for your question. If he was able to find mental health support apart from that offered by the NHS while he was there, since it is so important.
Could you define what those initials are for people that are listening?
The NHS is the National Health Service, so the public health service of the UK.
I think you would have to ask Kyle if he sought out any. I know certainly I did on his behalf. Reached out to some people in the UK. I wasn't very successful. Maybe I'm pretty good at finding people. That's what I do for a living. But I was unable to, I called some doctors I knew to find some resources for Kyle, but you'll have to ask him about that.
Sure, we'll ask Kyle a little bit later what that experience was for him. And there's one more question. Well, first someone said, thank you for the interesting perspective on border crossing and identification complications. And also how, for you, Christine, how was having a transgender son, how has having a transgender son changed how you work with corporations?
Well, I think I've always been known as someone who is really supportive of diversity. So I kind of think women are better at this business anyway, because they just don't call their mates. So, it really hasn't changed me, except I get very annoyed when people make these flash videos and talk a lot about it and do nothing.
I can imagine that would be frustrating, and being in the shoes of a parent.
Yeah.
So Dee, did you want to continue with your part of the...
Absolutely. So how does it feel now that Kyle is making decisions for himself and you're not necessarily need to be consulted? How does that feel for you? And how does that feel for you?
Well, I mean, you've not known Kyle long, but Kyle was very independent from a very young age. So didn't seek support. I think he listened politely if I said something, but I think he's always been, I didn't feel any difference that way.
Okay. And so then, has there been any decision that he has made for himself that you you did maybe agree with, or you wish he had not done?
Well, before he went away, we talked about it, and I asked him to I told him about all the research I'd done, or family doctor, and I said, could you wait before you start any kind of hormone therapy? And he said he would, but then he didn't. And I was most concerned about the whole issue of psychological support, because it's known to everybody that the rate of suicide among transgenders is much higher than the average. So that's what I was very concerned with.
Okay, so you're saying transgender people, right?
Transgender, yeah.
Right. And so, and then, as far as I know, the suicide rate is often due to not being able to be accepted and not being able to be out, not necessarily because a person now identifies as transgender. I think
No, I didn't mean that. No,
right,
no.
right. Okay, so I'm just saying that if anybody had perhaps spoken to you, that we want to give the whole picture, which is a person living in their affirmed gender, as is and really like makes a huge difference in a person's life.
But I will say, Dee, that when as a parent reading the statistics, there's no gradation. There's no column that says, well, people who are not out, people who are in transition. It's just an overall suicide rate. So it's very hard as a parent to understand those delineations.
Right. I think if we did more research, and I can send you some, give you some information another time, you'll see that there is evidence showing that. So,
Yeah.
Because we're more about a conversation, but I would be happy to help you with that information, so that when if you do more advocacy work, you'll have that information for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I think that it's important now to maybe bring Kyle in, because I'm dying to have him join us and keep the conversation going. So I know that he's on a delay too. So I think he's almost here, and he'll unmute himself when he can.
Hi, am I on here already?
And we'll get your video.
Yes. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's
Thank
so
you for having us.
cool.
I know. And so I met Kyle through a mutual friend, and we have gotten to spend a lot of time together since that time. And he was telling me all about his mom a lot. Hello, honey buddy.
Hi.
Hey, hi, how are you?
Hi.
I'm good. How are you? Sorry, I don't have
we had a
as
chance.
nice of a background.
You have a beautiful background. All we need is you in it, and it fills it so well that you don't even need a background. That's my opinion.
It's amazing.
You're good. The important thing is what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yes. This is true.
So, have you been listening?
Yeah, I've been listening. It's been
Great.
It's been a very interesting conversation. Yeah.
Okay. What
It's
have
cool
you
to hear.
found? What have you found the most interesting so far?
I think my mom's right that I am quite independent, and I sort of went off and just went about it. When you talk about like informing friends and family, I would say I mostly took care of like the telling friends part, changing Facebook, that whole kind of domain. And I definitely sent an email to my brothers to kind of let them know. But other than that, like I sort of was just like, you know what? I live in London. Before I show up for Christmas, I'm going to make sure that whoever's there knows, whether I talk to my mom about it or we email ahead of time, and just like people will eventually figure it out, like it's going to be like people are going to talk about it, and then I won't have to come out to every single person. So I'm sure, and my brothers told me the same thing, that they definitely took, they had to sometimes kind of step in and do that work. And I'm sure my mom was doing it to a large degree.
So your mom said that you wrote her a letter, and so I was wondering what that choice to write her a letter to explain that you were going to transition, as opposed to telling her via Zoom or in person, what brought you to come to that decision to do it in that manner?
I'd say that, well, first, I don't remember if it was a letter or what. I believe her that it was, but I do remember that we were driving and I made the very smart decision to be the person driving while I like deliver this news, which I don't know, I guess it was a letter, but I just remember being like, I can't get off out of this car really. We're on the highway. I don't really know, you know. And so it was interesting. It's kind of like we were getting on a 2-3 hour car ride. And I told her right at the very start of it. So I had to pull over because I started crying. But then after that, we just continued the drive and we talked about a lot of different things about what my mom's understanding of gender was and what her experience had been. So it was a choice that was a little nerve-wracking at the time, but it's kind of like it went okay, I think.
Excuse me.
And she was the first one I told, and then I didn't tell anyone for a while until I got to London.
So your memory is that you told her first and that the letter was at a different time, or do you believe?
No, I think the letter was in the car. We got in the car and I probably handed her like the letter, or I handed her something written down.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you were with her in the car. She was reading a letter while you were there in real space with her, because did you find it would have been hard to say the words out loud? Is that, I'm trying to understand, since you were now actually in her physical space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as she says, she was kind of gobsmacked, and I knew that this would kind of feel like it was coming out of nowhere. So rather than just like, I think saying like, oh, I'm trans and I've been like, you know, doing some research and this is what I want to like, I'm going away to college and I probably am going to pursue this because, you know, Hong Kong doesn't feel like the right place to come out. You know, rather than kind of saying all that and having to like get that out, which I think would probably have been very difficult to me, I was like, okay, just put something on paper so she can see like maybe that I thought about it, maybe that, you know, she can kind of have her reaction. So I trapped her in a car and I told her this and I was like, you got to deal with it. Like, what are we going to do about this?
Right. So, you know, I think that it's very interesting that you're saying this, because I think that there's not one good way to do it or not. And I think that, and when I say good, I mean, everything is acceptable. It really has to do with, it's an individual choice. And
Yeah,
like you're saying, your mom was a captive audience then. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that it really mattered to you to give her a private space with you to process it and ask you the questions, and that you were on the road. So you had a few hours to do it. And this way she could ask you directly.
yeah. It was very intentional, like to tell my mom first and give her, I don't know, just kind of like that, I don't know, respect or just feeling like she should know, you know, and just give her like before anyone kind of like, and before she finds out some other way. But, you know, you mentioned about like, there's no right way and there's also no right time because there's so many different circumstances where it may not be the choice to come out. I mean, I didn't want to come out in Hong Kong. I didn't know any trans people. I didn't really know about much of like the LGBT scene there. So, and you know, that's a relatively, it's just a different, you know, different city, just like New York's a different city, but it's not always safe for people to come out. And they may choose to come out in different ways. They may not come out to everybody, but they may just like move away and come out on their own and be out in their lives. And they're still out as trans people, but like may not have been able to kind of be authentic or share with their family.
Right. Because I think that you're speaking about how different countries and different cultures accept, don't accept, or have there's different rules and laws in different places, and it's about safety. And you seem to have a clear understanding of what would where you would be able to be protected the most. And were you concerned about your mom in any way because she mentioned about depression. Were you concerned about her during that time? And did you know it, what might have been the catalyst for her depression, as she's stating?
Well, first of all, I feel like, hi, Mom. I haven't said hi yet.
Hi.
We're on the
How are
live
you?
thing.
No,
Hi,
that's what I
Lilia
said.
and DM. We just jumped in, which is fine. I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thank you for helping me with the video before.
Yeah, no problem. I love it. It looks really cool. I like the bookcases. Yeah, I would say I wasn't sure how she would take it. My mom, as she says, like, she's always had gay friends. Like a lot of her best friends are like gay people. So I was used to having gay men around growing up, which is like something that not everyone gets, and it was very cool, I think, in Hong Kong, to be able to just understand, like, just, it was fine. It was not a problem. But I definitely, like, trans was not something we'd ever really spoken about, so I didn't know how she was going to handle it. And then I was also handling it, so I think we both, I don't know, I don't know.
I think it's fair to say, at least from my perspective,
Yeah.
I felt there was a distancing. You pushed away,
Mhm.
and you had to do your own thing, which was upsetting for me. But I think any parent whose child goes away, they find the same thing. But
Yeah.
you've always been very independent. So I think there was that pushing away. But for me, and I didn't share with Kyle that I was so depressed, because I thought he had enough to deal with. And there's, I didn't want him to think that he was the cause of it. But, that was something for me to deal with. And I did that in my own way. I saw a therapist, and, that was for me to deal with, not to put on him. He had enough to deal with.
Right. So I
And then,
know that I just want to say, I know that people, I don't know really if, only you two would know about, I'm hesitant to say that a child's transition is the cause of somebody else's depression. It's, I think, a person's understanding where they come from and their histories of not understanding something, and the unknowns and their fears might, and part of the grieving process can be, that. But I don't really, I don't know, maybe you have a different take on it, Kyle, but the thought of somebody's transition causing somebody's depression is I'm not sure how I view that.
I think, I think that my mom's right, is that, it can be in a transition process. It can be that your child kind of like pulls away or pushes you away, which can be very upsetting, right? I don't want to speak for my mom, but I imagine. But the truth is too, like, I don't think I knew how to help. I didn't really know the best way. I managed to find some support for myself in London, but I didn't really know what that would look like for my mom, right? So I just didn't know what to do. I mean, I feel like I like the workbooks, which is why I've been very interested in them, because to have something that you can even just like give your parent as a show of like, hey, I understand this is like new or like could be difficult, right? And being able to hand them something, so you're kind of like part of the process, but also, yeah, great, thank you, Lilia. But also, you're part of the process by bringing them in and offering them a resource, while also being like understanding that you're like, this is a workbook for you to reflect on your experience while I'm kind of going through mine, because yeah, it's a lot.
Right. It's two experiences at one time. So I mean, I'm not diminishing the depression or anything that's happening as a result of certain circumstances. I just feel that it's like a very complicated scenario. Like, Christine, I think you and I talked briefly about, we had a conversation that we were talking about vocabulary, and then I had when we once had a conversation, Kyle's name assigned at birth, which we don't, we're not going to be discussing today, was mentioned by you in reference to something, and then I had mentioned the word dead name, and then you and I had a private conversation about the feelings behind that and how upsetting it was to even hear a word like that. You hadn't heard that vocabulary word before, dead name, which people who are in transition or transition and use now their chosen name refer to not using the name that they were assigned at birth, and like how upsetting that was for you. And I can see, I realized, I apologize again that I realized.
No need to. It's just the first time I had heard that.
And you wanted to talk about that a little bit, that you had asked me to bring that up. So I want to make sure I do bring it up.
Yeah, I just think it's very, so part of grieving is what's not there anymore, or that person as you knew them is not there anymore. So to have that name referred to as the dead name, it's just like, I think it's awful. I can see your name assigned at birth, your chosen name, but that's pretty heavy for, I think, a parent. And I've been doing this for a while, Kyle, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's language is it's complicated. There's some terms that I feel like yeah, I don't know, the community uses some terms. I think the point is that the language is there to communicate something, and I think that what it's trying to communicate is that not every trans person is comfortable with their old name or in some way want to dissociate from it. So I think if if a parent finds that difficult to hear, like that term, which is just a term that's kind of used in the community, then like I think zooming out to what the feelings are around the name. So I think part of it is that I've, when I transitioned, my mom, or like, when I was in my last 2 years of high school, it was only my brothers had moved out. So it was only me and my mom. And so often, I go in and like we'd listen to the radio together, we had a show we liked. So, but all these things, once I transitioned, it was hard because she was kind of like felt like she was losing that, like where is so and so going? And then this new person who's calling me, who sounds like he has a cold all the time, or like is slowly getting a deeper voice, like this disembodied voice on the phone, like how do I tell her as her son, like that is not going away. Like we still like that radio show together, but like I think maybe even because of the continent, because I was like growing up in this period of like multiple transitions, that name becomes important, right? You're thinking of that person, and if she holds onto the name like that, but like can't also embody that like Kyle is that person, that's difficult, and I think I'm just speaking for what I think I saw my mom go through, and I feel like a name, like she picked that name for a reason, and I don't think names are important that parents give their kids. And I can understand why dead name would be an intense term, but I think the point is that just to understand where it's coming from.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can appreciate that. I'm just saying as a parent.
Totally.
Dee, the other thing, since this is also, this is for parents, I think that there's a couple of observations I've made or experiences I've had, is that there's actually very little support for parents of trans children, I'll say young people, or people, let's say young people transitioning. It's supposed to be, okay, this is the program, this is what your child is going to do, and you're kind of like, okay, but there's no support for parents. There really isn't. And I remember speaking to the psychiatrist that I found in New York, and he was like, well, he's kind of like, didn't really care, to be honest. And he said, well, I guess, there are support groups out there. Well, there's not a good well of resources. Let's put it that way. And the other thing I will say, Kyle, I think, I'm sorry. What?
No, go ahead.
Something.
Okay.
I just wanted to. Can I just add something in, because I don't want to let that thought go. There is that there are really great resources, and I wish I had known you during the time. I don't know who was in letting you know there's only support groups. I mean, there's Ackerman, there's Columbia, there's tons of great programs, and there is a lot of help out there. And I know things shift and change so quickly that we're not even aware. I mean, even Kyle's involved with, something, whatever. And I know that there are resources for parents, and that I have tons of them in the book. I mean,
Okay.
tons.
I think
And then,
like, I feel like with well, first of all, it was 8 years ago that I came out, right? Which it really has changed so quickly. And I really, and even then, even now, I work in the field and I'm only, and I'm learning about what's out there. But even then, I don't know like what the best resources are. So it can be very confusing if you're not already kind of like have someone who can guide you into what is available. I mean, so as you say, DM, I do run a support group now on Zoom, and I think about that sometimes. I wonder, like, Mom, I would put this to you. What, so I run this support group now, and it's on Zoom, and people can kind of speak. What would have been something would have been helpful to you during that time if you had like a similar resource?
Oh, just to be able to talk to another parent and understand what they had gone through or were going through, how they felt. And I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. So when Kyle was in the hormonal transition stage, I think Kyle, fair to say, you and I talked about this and the way it was administered in the UK, bursts of testosterone, which all of a sudden I found Kyle becoming very aggressive. And I was just like, whoa. And I felt I could
I just want to interrupt for 1 second. Kyle, are you comfortable talking about this aspect of your personal life? Because if you're not, you weren't on, I say if there's anything too personal that you don't want to discuss, I want to just respect you, and I know your mom does too.
Yeah.
So if you need us not to continue this way, let us know.
Thank you. I'd say I basically sum this part up, and I mean, as long as we keep it on my mom's experience, I think it's fine. But I'd say that this part, what she's talking about is, you're going through like a second puberty as well. So there's that on top of everything else.
Yeah, no, fine. So that's my point. It's like you're living through puberty again, but in a very different way. And, it would have been helpful if a parent said to me, well, in transitioning, there's going to be hormones and, in this case of male, just lots of testosterone. So this is what my experience was. So as long as, because I took it personally.
I see. And, it's a good point. 8 years ago, the world was very different, and support, there were support out there, but not like it is now. And there are tons of support groups. There are parents who volunteer. I have a whole bunch of parents that say anytime a parent wants to talk to me, just as I have partners, just give them my name and number. And so I'm sorry, Christine, that you had to go through that on your own. And I can see how sad and depressing that could feel, and be for you.
Well, it was also, thank you. It was also very hard because I was in Hong Kong.
Right.
And nobody was around. Everybody was someplace else. So there was no friend support group. And certainly there was nothing in the way of the transgender community in terms of resources for parents. I don't even for transgender people.
If there's time, can I ask a question? Do we have time still?
Yeah, we have time, but yes. But Christine, you had a second point that you had wanted to make for parents. The first one was about that there wasn't like any support, and
the second one was about the effects of hormones, and that it all of a sudden this child does become very different in the sense he and I had never actually. I was all through Kyle's teenagers. We never had a problem. We might have had one or two moments, but it wasn't that, we always got along very well, and we could talk openly. So this was a very new experience of him interacting with me this way.
Right. And so that was my question about this. The ways that you two interact or how you related to him change? He made a reference to, I think, a radio show or something that something you listened to. How did your relationship with him change for you?
Well, I think there was initially, for me, I felt I was being pushed away, and kind of I felt he was isolating himself. I didn't know what to do. I felt that we sometimes had some tense conversations, but I think now it's all evened out. But I'm just saying it was for me, maybe not for Kyle, a rough 3 or 4 years.
So how now though, it sounds like you're in different places, even though you're both growing in this. How do you affirm together or separately the transition and aspects of this? I mean, whether it's in what ways do you do it that you affirm that where your relationship is now, to be able to honor that he is in a different place, has shifted, things have shifted between you?
Well, for me, it's been, it's been a while now. So I think like anything, there's some getting used to this. It's a journey. And so I think, I feel, excuse me, I feel very good about our relationship.
Okay. How about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I feel good about it. I was gonna ask my mom what it was like to go from like having 2 sons to 3 sons, because I know I remember watching my brothers.
That would actually, I can't believe you read my mind. That was like my next question, but I was going to say, how it felt, that change for you too. That's a question I was wondering myself.
It was a challenge to go from having 2 sons and a daughter to having 3 sons, and also having experienced my 2 older sons as little boys since they were born. And so then there is a difference when someone transitions. So, and there were no reference points because he's a different person. So it was a journey. I think that my other sons, I don't know about you, Kyle, I thought your brothers were great.
They were fantastic.
Yeah.
I think what was interesting is like my mom actually is not, I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of line to say that, and she can tell me if I am, but that she's not like she's feminine and strong, but she's not like
A girly girl.
in some ways. Yeah, she's not a girly girl, right? She's like, she's worked in very like male dominated businesses, and like she's like, so she understands gender, in a weird nuanced way, but also from like a female perspective, and so wanted me to be strong as well, and tough and all this. But then also like I think you enjoyed having a daughter, right? Like, and so it was like sort of navigating that. And but I think now what's really nice is I think she's actually like really proud of her sons. I think she always was, but like, and she but now I think like sometimes my mom will say something to kind of make me feel affirmed, like that I'm the favorite son or something like that.
I hope your brothers aren't listening.
I hope my brothers aren't listening. But when she says those things, it's really nice for her to like use that terminology, and you're like, oh yeah,
right,
No,
to
but I
refer
think-
to you as her son.
Yeah. Kyle is actually the bravest person I know, because he did this with great equanimity. I'm sure in your quiet moments or alone, you didn't always feel that way, but he just to be so brave and do this. And I think actually you've never made, you just kind of rolled with it. I mean, I remember that first Christmas, at Kathy's, and I just think, and I also have to say, I think everybody in our sphere was very supportive, right? But Kyle was he just forged ahead. Yeah.
I mean, you just sort of have no choice at some point, and it's just there are people around us who have been good and supportive, and just a few supportive people can make a huge amount of difference in how you're walking into a space if you know that there's someone there who supports you. And we need people to continue like advocating and working for it. So it's important to have these talks.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially parents to be affirming and supportive. And, as far as your 3 sons, right. And I think it is, there is a shift and a change for parents when their child, the dynamics of the family presentation may be different to others, and explaining that to others or understanding it for yourself. And that's why I was going to bring it up. I'm grateful to you, Kyle, because the truth is that when people, the dynamics change in the relationships, so does the family dynamics. How a parent reacts to that really makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. And I also want to add, just because I'm thinking about other people like watching this, is that like I'm sitting here talking about this, and my mom's talking about this, but then also, you know, in terms of family acceptance and support, I can come across as quite binary, or I can, you know, blend in and quote unquote pass, you know, I and what that means is passing as the gender, you know, that society, like walking along the street, I'm read as male, you know, and not everyone is able to, not everyone wants to pass. And so that can be difficult too, if you're coming out to family and they're saying, well, okay, so you were female or you were male, and now you have to be the other, you have to act a certain way, you have to dress a certain way. And if it's anything out of that, then like that's too much, you know, and I think families should also understand that going into this, there's not going to be a rule book on how your child is going to transition, what your child wants. But the family support regardless is so key. Like if you can just use the pronoun and the name your child wants, this is going to be huge for them already, just knowing that they've got that, however they want to present and whoever they are.
Actually,
Right,
Kyle,
I
you
think,
said something.
Go ahead.
I was just, Kyle said something before about, you know, basically going through puberty again. So I think maybe it would be helpful to for parents to think of, okay, your child is transitioning, he or she is going through puberty, and which is a gradual process. And if they think of it that way, I think is as opposed to waking up as female one day, male the next, or vice versa.
But there's also no end game. Like you can be going through puberty, and puberty is the time of figuring out who you are. And your parent also like if the parent doesn't have expectations of what the end of that puberty is going to look like, I think that'd be helpful for everyone involved as well, you know.
Right, because it could
But
be,
it is a process. You're right. You don't just wake up one day.
Right.
right. And so, you know, he, she, they, and many other pronouns there, but also not that a person, part of their journey in their gender transition is not identifying along the binary. And I think, you know, to add on to what Kyle's saying is that there needs to be space for a child, an adult in transition to be sorting things out for themselves during that time. But at the same time, parents are going, that's why it's titled, you know, your transition as your child transitions, is that the parent is going through their own transition, and that respecting everybody's space and having an open communication between, in this case, you two, you know, you might have taken a breather or a pause, which happens sometimes, but the love and the bond that you two have is evident, and that you ended up being able to come to a place, whether it was in the car and you know, you kept your mom in the car with you because this was very important to you. You know, her love and her support was vital, and that along the way, there's going to be all these steps, these baby steps, and it seems like you're both handling it with grace. And I thank you both, you know, for your time. I was just wondering before we get off, is there anything that you would have wanted me to ask you that I didn't, or anything you wanted to say before? Oh, I think Lil has one. Go ahead, Lil.
I just wanted to say, indeed, that I don't think you've mentioned this time in the same words, the fact that there are three really processes happening at the same time, right? The person in the gender transition, their partner, has their own parallel journey, or their parent, and the relationship.
Yes, and I do always bring that up. So thanks for reminding me, Lil, is, you know, it's your transition, their transition, and your transition together. You're into the relationship. And that, but I think that you two have really shown that here with, you know, without me even needing to say it, but I'm grateful that you reminded me, is that you two have really demonstrated that, and that there's many ways a gender transition, and then there are often there's other transitions in life that are going on at the same time, and, you know, going off to a different country, going to a different school. And that's why having this conversation with a person who was going from, I mean, I understand that Kyle's always been an independent person, but there were still certain decisions that a parent can make for their child, whether the child likes it or not, even if they're independent, and then losing that ability. And this in this can play a role in the dynamics of a relationship. And so in the end, that is one of the points that I wanted to understand. And I think you two have conveyed it well to me, to understand that how you handled that, the transition through being an adult now. Kyle?
I just want to mention, and I will always mention this, but Disclosure is a great documentary on Netflix about, I think, how it's about how the media portrays trans people, have portrayed trans people. And I think about that documentary a lot because however, we're going through our interventional processes, we're transitioning our relationship, you can't stop the societal view of trans people being in that relationship, whether that came from like my mom not being able to find a ton of research because we haven't, been doing research on trans people in a sensitive way, or really asking them about what they need to learn more about the community and what they need. And Disclosure, I think, is amazing because it really shows how we've, made people, we've crafted this narrative of what trans people are. And so I'm sure my mom was also having to deal with a lot of these things as well. Like we don't have a positive view of trans people. And the more we can put that out there and have more parents talking about what it was like and sharing and making it a joyful experience, the better.
I think it's a fabulous documentary. It actually came out right when I was finishing my third book, and I added it in as a resource because I felt very strongly about that. And I'm glad again that you brought it up because I felt I really wanted to get it in. I asked to edit it in at the last moment because I thought it was important to include. Lil?
I put the link to the website, Disclosure, the movie, in the chat. So anybody who wants to find out more about it, it is a great film.
Okay, so Christine, do you want to add any last, you get the last word, Christine.
I just had a couple of things before Christine. So she gets the last word. I have to say something. Okay. And just to let Christine know that Sophie, who's writing in some comments
I think
here.
it might be Denise, because Denise and Sophie are sometimes on the same thing. So
yeah.
I know Sophie texted and said, sometimes it's Denise, just so we know.
I'm not sure who it is this time, but yes, it's one of them. And they said they were commenting when we were having the conversation earlier. Sophie said there's an entire vocabulary and terminology used in the LGBTQ plus community, so and some very specific nuances that can make it difficult to learn. And so I put in a link too with to the guide that GLAAD has. And also Sophie mentioned that it can be quite jarring to hear some of the specific vernacular, so she agrees with you on that topic when we were talking about dead naming. And finally, and that she feels you and trying to figure out how to get through a transition when you feel very alone is very difficult. So she was showing some sympathy there for you earlier.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll have our next interview is on June 9th. It's earlier in the month than usual, and it'll be with a father of a child in transition. And, because Father's Day, we did Mother's in May. In the US, Mother's Day is in May and Father's Day is in June. So this was part of the thinking, but also, and I do, Christine, I know that you said that Kyle is the bravest person you know, but I want to say you're pretty brave in my book, and really someone quite special. And, I don't think that it should be overlooked. And that I think what you really conveyed was that for some parents, the grieving process could be hard, and that you can feel isolated, as was just mentioned by the last viewer. And
I just don't think there's enough attention paid to the grieving process of the parents. It's kind of like, this is what your child has chosen, go with the program. And irrespective, and without any concern for how they feel. That's what I
Okay.
was.
I want to let you know that I wholeheartedly agree with you, and that's why it's a big section in all of the books, especially in the parent book about grieving. It's the 4th chapter, actually, and I feel that it really does need to be honored, and I do a lot of writing and research on this fact. So I'm completely aligned with you. Everybody doesn't grieve. Every parent doesn't know, and everybody doesn't grieve in the same way. And I think it's also important to recognize that the person in transition also has a loss and grief throughout the process too, and that's sometimes overlooked or not discussed. And so thank you for sharing that. And Lil, something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention how at the beginning I mentioned Ida Hobbit, and I don't know if everybody knows what that means. Shall I explain, or would you like to,
No, go right ahead.
explain, Kyle? Is Kyle frozen? No. Okay, yep, no, he's not. So Ida Hobbit is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. And it's been going for quite a long time now. And it's just a moment, one of those days in the year where we yet again have the opportunity to raise the visibility of the community. And so I think it's just important to mention that and to hug your trans person this week.
If they want to be hugged.
If they want to be hugged, ask first. Just give a little sign of support and yeah, and their parents too, of course.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? Christine,
it's okay to hug me, Kyle.
Okay, that's it.
So did you have anything else that you wanted to add, Dee, to close today, the interview?
Well, I just wanted to thank you both very much. And I know that you probably know this already, but you've helped a lot of people listening in, and your advocacy work, both of you, is really going to make a big difference when people tune in. And Kyle, I know that you have your parent and partner group, and Christine, your work that you're doing behind the scenes as a person who helps people get jobs, to keep in mind what I had mentioned earlier, and that offering jobs to everybody of all genders, of all presentations, will make a huge difference in everybody's life going forward.
And it's a parent, partner, and siblings family group. So if anyone wants that information, can they reach out to you, Lilia?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. If they want to get in touch with either one of you, please, my email is, it's dm.maynard@gmail.com. Feel free to email me at any time.
I've put a link to your website in the chat. And all of these contact information is in the description of this video. So it doesn't matter if anybody hasn't been able to come while we're live. This video is now, will be saved on our channel along with all the other lives in the series. So people know how to get in contact with Dee if they need to.
Can I just say one more thing? So if anybody, because I think the Hong Kong community is pretty, I mean, there's no discussion going on. But if anybody would like, I've already received inquiries just through sharing that we were going to do this. People who have children, I think, or want to transition. If anybody does want to speak to me, I'm happy to, but if they could do it through you. I'm not on Facebook. I took myself off. So if they want to get, you have my email address.
Yes, I would be happy to do that. And I think it's just a safety way to screen through us. So yes, I will be happy to do that, Christine. I wanted to give you the last word, but since you asked me a question, I'm answering.
Okay, that's it. No, I wanted to thank you very much. And thank you, Kyle, for inviting me as well. I love you.
Love you too.
Oh.
I love you both.
I love you guys.
Actually, Lil too. Okay, Lil. So
I'll close this up now. Thank you, everybody, for
Thank
joining.
you, Lilia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
we go off so we could all wave together.
Yes, let's give a big hand for those who are listening. Please stir your claps in the comments and in the live chat here on your screen. Give us some claps, please. Share, like, follow, and make sure to come back, as Dee mentioned, next month on the 9th of June for our next live stream. Please remember to ask before you give hugs to your trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming friends. Small signs of affection don't require physical contact. And please stay tuned. The links are in our description, as I said. And please remember, everybody, your happiness matters. So come back. We look forward to seeing you next month. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.